Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 1 o'clock session here with Ryan Holtz. I just want to quickly say thank you to our sponsor, Travelers Insurance. So, brief introduction to our next presenter, the owner of Ryan Holtz Marketing, and the producer and I'm going to say star of the Ryan Holtz Show, a podcast you can find in the top 100 on iTunes. Ryan's interviewed everyone from celebrities and business sharks like Dennis O'Leary to music superstars like Montel Jordan, and I'm going to say life gurus and business coaches like Tim Story. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Ryan. Take it.
Listen, Tom, the only thing I'm going to say is Mr. Wonderful, a.k.a. Kevin O'Leary, is going to be very upset that you called him Dennis or whatever name that was. Hey, everyone, welcome to another episode of Today. And I was kind of eavesdropping in on some of the earlier sessions and panels, and you know, it's really, really cool to be here. First of all, I want to thank Tanya. I want to thank Tom. I want to thank Sharif for having me and the Team Holtz squad, present to you guys. A little context. I've worked in insurance before, back when I was about 21 years old. I worked for a direct rater, which at the time was State Farm, which is now Desjardins. And then, I kind of wanted to slip up the format and go to the broker side. So at 21, I basically said I was there for a year and said, hey, I'm gonna go and try to build a good book of business and see if I can work like a 60-40 split with the broker. And I actually managed to do it, sold it. Rest is history. Got into marketing and all that stuff. But I want to also introduce my friend here. I've named him or her. I can't decide if he's a guy or he's a girl, but his name is 2020. And the consensus going around when I've given some of these talks is everybody's like, 2020 could not end soon enough. And, my son, I have a 4-year-old son named Dejan, and he comes to me one day and he says, hey, Daddy. I said, what? He said, sometimes we're walking around and people look sad on their face. And when you're talking to a 4-year-old, child, and I'm sure people who are seeing this have kids and whatnot, it's hard to explain why. And so he says, well, tell me why. I need a reason. And everybody who has kids knows that one of the favorite words is why. And I said, because the world got put on detention. The world got put, on a timeout. And, I think we can focus on that, but I think there's also some silver linings on that. And I'd like everybody, especially because we got, brokerage owners and people from the company side and, leaders and executives and people who are managing people in their lives on a daily basis, which I know, maybe some of you have had to make some tough decisions back in 2020. But I'd all encourage us to focus on our controllables. And there's really only 4. The first one is our actions. The second one is our responses. The third one is our effort. And the fourth one is our attitude. And if we bring all 4 of those and we show up and we give it 100%, I think we're going to be just fine. That being said, I think COVID-19 has pushed us probably 10 years forward, where we're talking right now, and this would not be possible without the internet. And, I do a lot of business on the marketing side of things, helping companies and brands brand themselves. So, I'm very, very heavy in the automotive industry, real estate. And, a lot of these industries are, still a little bit of old school mentality. And it's really fun to see, 68-year-old, Jack, who owns 6 dealerships, who's never wanted to do anything digital, is Zooming and Skyping and FaceTiming and doing all these things. And I think what it's done is it's really allowed people to be, a lot more open with some of the decisions that they're making. So the title of today's talk is, what is brand currency, essentially, and why the heck do you need it? And if you ask 10 people, hey, what does brand mean? You might get 10 different answers, but essentially a brand is a person's gut feeling about you, about your product, about your service. That's your policy holders. That's everybody who's dealing with you and doing business with you. And always remember, you can say what your brand is, but that is irrelevant. It's what your customers or your clients or your policy holders are saying about you. And that really is, the end all be all. A lot of business owners and people are always talking about, creating funnels that lead to sales and to more business and to more revenue. And I think it's good, but I think that, in the midst of what everybody's going through right now, you need to start creating funnels to people, that are kind of taking them to your content that's making them on their own decide that they want to do business with you. We can name out the big companies like Amazon and, Jeff Bezos, and he's a trillionaire. And through my podcast, my whole goal is curiosity. And it's, how can I bring on some of the best minds in the world from various different industries and help our listeners push the needle forward in their own personal development? So, two notables I had on, Jim Foster is the founder of Reebok. And I want to tell a quick story. And he said, hey, Ryan, when we founded Reebok, which now is, sitting around maybe a $4 billion company, he says, I was very, very focused on brand. Everything was about the brand. And I said, how come, when I was doing my digital deep dive on Jim, I said, I really can't find a lot of information about you. And I know that, his family and whatnot, they come up a lot, but not specifically him. And he said, Ryan, I was so obsessed with building the brand, and I didn't want to confuse people with cross messaging, with mixed messaging. And I just really wanted to build Reebok. And for him, it was really interesting to hear somebody who's at that stature in the business world admit that they completely suck at sales. And, we always have the sales versus marketing debate. But he said, no, I was very, very focused on marketing and building those relationships, because I knew ultimately that if people were going into the shoe store and asking, hey, is there Adidas shoe? I wanted them to ask for Reebok. And, that's something that I think brokerage owners can really, kind of take notice of and understand when you're building, the brand. And regardless of where you're at in your process, these are really actionable items in which you can kind of take and really apply them to almost anything. I don't want to talk for my full 45 minutes today, because I would love to open it up for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please, keep them till the end. I would love to take as many questions as I can. I've done a few of these talks so far this year, and, we've really utilized the question period, and that's kind of made this session fruitful. So just keep that in mind. But going back into the Reebok story, it was all about building the brand. And because Joe said, hey, Jim, sorry, says, I suck at sales. He's like, I need to really go heavy on marketing and brand so that, the business comes to me. How would you build a powerful brand in 2021? The number one thing, and, there's kind of a 6-item step process I'm going to give to this. And number one is finding underpriced attention. So what I mean by this is, we had a company, a couple of weeks back towards the end of the year that, we're basically deciding, where do I want to spend my marketing budget for 2021? And Ryan, this 2020 has been a crazy year. Where do I want to really calculate and kind of appropriate my money in terms of getting my message out there in 2021, when I'm really not certain what's going to take shape? And my first response was, just focus on, creating content that really showcases you, your product, or your service, so that when it comes time to really distribute that out on the various social platforms, you have a lot of content that you can go pull back from and basically put out there as your tools. So my first step is finding underpriced attention. And what I mean by that is Facebook right now, if we look at Facebook, for instance, Facebook is expensive. It's expensive to advertise on. Google's great, search and all that. But depending on, hey, we know what's one of the most expensive words that you can buy, for the click rate on Google. It's insurance. So you guys, when it comes to the search side of things, you're going to pay top dollar to get that attention. But there's platforms out there right now that are almost giving like 100% organic reach, which is TikTok, is LinkedIn. And everybody who's listening right now, you're saying, is this another person telling us that we have to go on TikTok? I'm telling you, it's not about TikTok. It's about what tool can you get for the best price. And we would never tell somebody to go buy a stock when it's at its highest in the market. We would tell that person to buy the stock when it's at the lowest, so that there's going to be some margin to make some dollars there. So that's what I mean by that. Point number 2 is put out content. And everybody I know stands up as marketers and says, put out content. And some of the kickback is always, well, if we're in the insurance industry, Ryan, it's very, very regulated. We have to watch. There's, policy wordings, and there's all these different things. Now, back when I had my general level 1 and 2, and I'm writing my little exam, which I did fail the first time. Full disclosure on that. I failed the first time. On the second time, when I passed it, after sweating bullets, I said, well, geez, on the whole questionnaire, there was nothing that said, Ryan, you got to stop your personality from shining when you're, delivering and trying to write new business, right? And I call it the multi-line discount versus the multi-platform reach. Because we know in the insurance business, and I'm going to speak only on the personal lines because I'm still familiar with it, but the retention of having somebody on one fire or renter's policy as opposed to an auto policy and a home policy is dramatically different, because you start fencing that customer, that policyholder in with different products and multiple products, which means that you make it harder for them to leave because they're starting to put a lot of their business with you. That being said, I was on the phone and maybe about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm talking to my broker, and he calls me up every year, kind of on the 1 year renewal. And I think Pete earlier in the earlier session was talking about, ways to really try to, be kind of a rock star to your policyholder when you're having that initial contact. Well, he calls me up. He says, listen, it's going to be the same premium. We're going to keep you at the same company. And as he's describing this to me, it reminded me of my days when I was reading the SPF #1, Alberta, right? The auto policy. I mean, I still to this day could never get through that policy without falling asleep. The wording in it alone is just ridiculous. So I said to him on the phone, I said, there's two things here. I said, I know we've done business now for a while, so I'm going to be very honest with you. First of all, you sound like you hate your job. And it's just a turnoff to me right now as the customer. Like, I know you're explaining stuff, but just the tonality, like, for instance, you could teach people insurance, but, put some personality on it. And I said the second thing to him, I said, do you kind of have to work to be this boring? Because I'm so bored as the customer. I'm only talking to you on the phone, which we'll get to that later, once a year, because I'm paying annually, not on a monthly plan. And, you have the one shot to really talk to Ryan and build some rapport. And it's just, well, let's just go through the motions and, does this look good, Ryan? And maybe we can, next year, depending on if your situation changes, we can, look at a different company and blah, blah, blah. And his reaction really wasn't much, which I think kind of left me feeling like, what the heck is going on here? Like, I just told your customer just told you literally to your face, well, on the phone, that, hey, you're kind of boring them. And, it leads into how to build a brand. And that's, be authentic, personality. The personality in which we're showcasing online right now is absolutely massive. In some platforms, the consumption of people's usage, say on Facebook or Instagram, is up 50 to 70% because people are sitting at home, just remote working and taking in that amount of content. And people who are listening to this right now, who are in the business development field, or sales and marketing, trying to consistently fill your pipeline with leads, you understand that, a big part of your business was getting out there and shaking hands and networking and really trying to understand, hey, how can we place our product or service for, XYZ prospect to make sure that, hey, we can offer them a product. Fast forward into COVID, 19, where a lot of that element, and depending on where you are in Canada, province to province, is cut off, where it's, well, hey, no, don't stop by the office, stay at home. And people are like, well, how do I develop business using that, Ryan? And it goes back to the brand, where everybody's got a phone, everybody's got a smartphone, you got Instagram, you got TikTok, you got Twitter, you got all these different platforms now that you have to take some of those skills that you were doing in person and put them online. It was very cool to watch, Sharif this morning in the panel just kind of talk about the state of the industry, some of the impacts, that obviously the pandemic has had. But what was cool to watch that is just to see how everybody's in a different position, in a different spot. And we're seeing sometimes the back of your homes. And, it's gotten very, very personal that way. So I implore people, again, when you're kind of thinking about brand, think about the messaging in which you want to put out that's very inviting to come back, right? I'll give you a small example. If we take a tenants policy and I say, okay, I want to go out there and I want to get a tenants policy. I want to write as many tenants policies or renters policies that I possibly can. The first thing I think about is, okay, who's going to need a renter's policy? Who's going to need a tenant's policy? And then I kind of, plot the profile in my head and I think, okay, but, maybe somebody starting out, maybe a little younger. And depending on the age range and maybe the income, I kind of, ascertain, I kind of look at my tools. And in this case, our brand tools, we're going to use social media. We're going to use Facebook. We're going to use Instagram. We're going to use TikTok. We're going to use Twitter. But we're not going to use them all at the same time because it's not needed. It just depends on the tool that's going to really help me get to my audience, depending on who that audience is. I seen a broker out east. They're on TikTok and they were talking about this subject. And one of the brokers was saying, he's doing a funny little video and he was just talking about, hey, did you know about renter's insurance? Did you know about tenant's insurance? And because TikTok is so young, where you have, a heavy, I mean, it used to be a lot younger, but, you're getting into that, late teens, early 20s. And, when we start getting into those age ranges, we start building our life. And, even though a tenant policy or renter's policy isn't that big of money, we know that it's going to give us the point of entry to start building a great relationship with that potential policyholder. Long story short, I'm seeing a broker using TikTok to meet that specific maybe person who could use that product in a space where the person who needs the product is actually there and active and is engaged in, right? And branding is all about having fun, branding is all about having fun. It's about taking your product or service, kind of making it very, very easily understandable, 2020, and really kind of, getting the points out of what problem does this provide a solution for? What problem does this really serve? So, it's interesting, I kind of sit back and first of all, I wanted to put on a tie because, it's COVID. I mean, I've been living in, a ball cap and t-shirt for so long. My wife this morning was saying to me, oh my God, where are you headed? I'm like, well, just headed down the hall into my office, into my studio. But she's like, oh, I said, but, at the same time, it's, well, the attitude, and I want to show up for you guys. And showing up is kind of half the battle when it comes to branding, especially with online, because some people say, hey, Ryan, when should you post? How often should you post? Should you post every week? Should you post every Thursday? And people who are listening, that's why podcasting is a great format. You can say to your audience, hey, every Monday, there's going to be an episode dropping. So you're setting the expectation. With social media, you can do the same thing as well, where it's consistently, you're always showing up. And the content doesn't have to look commercial. It doesn't have to look professional. You don't have to go buy an expensive camera. Your phone does it. You can show behind the scenes stuff. You can show, vulnerability in the sense of, hey, we've had to make some tough decisions today at the office. And it wasn't a good day for us. And people who are on the other end of that message or the other end of the phone say, hey, I kind of felt that. And I'd still like to think that, people do business with people they like, know, and trust. We're in the humanizing business. For me, I'm trying to find ways of using my cell phone and my mobile phone to completely connect with people, whether it's sending a voice message on LinkedIn, whether it's flipping the camera around and saying, hey, how's it going today? Really trying to put the human touch. I think the panel, I can't remember who talked about it this morning, but basically just talking about, how people want to be amongst their coworkers, want to be amongst their team and really try to feel that energy. That I do agree, working from home is all good, but if we're having a strategy session and we're at the boardroom or wherever the heck we're doing that, just to see people's tonality, their face, their posture, we've kind of had that taken away a little bit. But the good news is that we can find ways online to do that, which obviously many of you have already done that. But just something to think about. Communication, communication is so prevalent when it comes to online. A simple tactic, and it's amazing. Let's say that you had a certain product or service, and you're trying to sell a certain policy. Maybe it's a key man policy where you're like, listen, if you own a business, you need to have this insurance because God forbid something happens to you, and your business, you need to be covered for that. Well, I can go on Instagram and I can go search the hashtag entrepreneur, and then I can figure out the location. And everybody who's literally said on their post, hey, I'm an entrepreneur or a business owner within, 50 kilometers of Calgary or Edmonton or Fairmont or wherever you are, I can actually just go on their post and say, hey, have a great day, and really go out there and start introducing myself to those people in a very, very cool and calm way. And it's amazing that when you spend that kind of time, for me, it's a practice I do almost daily where I'll take 25 minutes and I just go hit the hashtags of people I want to do business with. And I get in their photos and say, hey, have a great day. Take care. Have some fun. Throw some emojis up, poop emojis. That seems to work even better sometimes. And that to me has brought a lot of business. It's a business development tactic, no different than when you would fill up your calendar and say, I want to go for all these lunches that sometimes you really don't enjoy going for. How many lunches can you go to until you're like, geez, this is getting played out. You know what I'm saying? Don't agree to it. But that's where I'm talking about, just using that communication. Tenants policies. It is a good example, because it's such a basic policy, but there's such a big audience for that policy online if you choose to find the right tool. In terms of branding, again, you need the right tools for the job. And, a lot of the frequently asked questions I get all the time is, Ryan, we don't have time to, do all the different platforms, nor do we understand how all the different platforms work. Which one should we use? Which platform should we not use? Here's our goals. And I have to just ask everybody, think of the platforms as tools. Don't get too hopped up in, Facebook's Facebook and Twitter's Twitter and Instagram's Instagram and TikTok's TikTok. They're all tools depending on the audience in which you're trying to get. And again, you're branding. Every time you come out, I'm branding right now. I got a poop emoji here. I have yet to see a virtual speaker, start off and kick off a talk with a virtual poop emoji. That's a form of branding. It's a form of differentiating yourself from the pack. And, hopefully it provides some entertainment as well. With the virtual talks, I'm looking at the camera right now, and I'm envisioning that you guys are all behind the camera, but all I'm seeing right now is a whiteboard. And I told my wife to peek in and just kind of say, hey, Ryan, how's it going? Just so I know that, you guys are all there. But that's kind of my point on here's how you build a brand quick. Now, your currency is earned or lost by the way you show up online to your current or future policy holder. Your goal is to answer the question, what's in it for them? What is in it for them? The currency. We're building the currency. No different than at the end of the year, we're talking about profits, losses, debits, credits, expenses, all these different things. You need to put in a category, currency, right? I went to Mr. Wonderful on my podcast. I said, hey, Kevin, you're putting out so much content now. I noticed with the Shark Tank. I know you guys are doing remote. He says, oh, Ryan, I'm putting out tons of content. We're filming and we're doing Zoom calls and I'm doing all these kinds of interviews and things like that. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, would you consider content like an asset? Would you consider it like a form of currency? And without hesitation, he said, oh my gosh, of course I would. So much that I'm putting my valuable number one asset, which is my time, into producing content. He said, how else are you going to get out there right now and shake hands and build rapport? He says, I want to make sure that when somebody's opening up their phone, they're seeing me, they're seeing my team, they're seeing what we're trying to do here. And that's what really got me on the talk of kind of currency into the brand, because I just thought, my goodness, somebody who's, they've done well in life, obviously, if they're willing to say, hey, I'm making this a mandatory thing in my life to produce content. When I think about content, I think about, okay, I'm in a brokerage and I'm sitting there. Well, who should create content? Like, what does that look like? Like, assuming maybe you guys are digitized, maybe some of you still got the filing cabinets where it's, Duke and Lukey calls up and their last name starts with a W and you run to the filing cabinet in the back and you're trying to, who does create that content? And I think the answer really is anybody inside your organization can do that. And, again, I kind of stress that I know heavy regulated, lots of rules and procedures that you have to adhere to, rightfully so. It's insurance. I mean, this is something that, impacts people's lives. And, that's one of the reasons I love insurance is I just think, I think you should have too much insurance. I mean, it's one of those things where life happens and you want to make sure that, my favorite word, indemnity. I want to make sure that whatever position I was in, you're going to bring me back. And that's why I'm paying you as a policyholder, even though my broker's a little boring. That's why I'm paying you. So those are things that, again, just think about who can create content. What could we show? What's some certain things that were happening? Has there been a birthday in the office? Is there upcoming birthdays happening? Just really trying to go behind, pull out of the policy for a bit and just try to humanize that. And I think, again, that's branding. That's branding. But it is that one question, we always come back to that, is what's in it for them, the policyholder. Sharif, I met years ago at an auto conference, and back then him and I, one thing I always loved about, chatting with Sharif is it was always about kind of innovation and trying to move forward. And I remember I said to him, I said, you know what annoys the heck out of me, Sharif? How I have to leave my life in my vehicle and go into my house. He said, what do you mean? I said, I have to leave my pink card, my registration card in my vehicle, which to me has more than enough information on it, assuming somebody breaks into my vehicle. Yes, get the $250 deductible for comprehensive. You never know when stuff happens. But he said, well, you make a good point there. He says, I want to have a digital pink card option. I think, brokers, we should have an app. And, if you're a policyholder, you should be able to access a pink card like you can do Uber Eats. And this was years ago. Obviously now in Alberta with, legislation and laws, when it took a while, just like everything else does. But I don't think that should hold you back from trying to innovate and try to find ways to really separate yourself. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think there's any fancy ways to do that from a high level. I think it's the small things done right every single day, continuously every single day. And I think your policyholders will appreciate you for it. I think that, people understand that, they appreciate it. And anytime you get to go the extra mile, even digitally, I think is just absolutely awesome. Little things I would do, and maybe it suits my personality, but if I was selling insurance still, and I was doing those yearly reviews, and maybe they were on Instagram or whatnot, and I'm building that rapport because maybe I've grown with a customer 5, 10, 15 years and watched his family grow or her family grow and grow into, just starting out working. And maybe this person now has a business, they have family, they have kids, they have employees. I mean, one policy gets to a heavy amount of policies quick as somebody grows. But I would constantly look for ways to really draw into, hey, how can I communicate with this person? Could I send them a text message? If I'm making some commission from them every year, maybe I could send them a Starbucks card, $15 card, and say, hey, really appreciate you doing business with us and choosing us as your provider. Coffee's on us today. Something simple, right? And I get it. There's logistics and all that, but I'm not here to work all that out. You guys are here to do that. Finding ways to use tech to speed up the process. I think again, the apps, the pink cards, the policies, the everyday things that people are calling in to do, the amendments, the changes, the abeyances, whatever software you're using to keep in contact with your insurance, with your customer, your client, or your policyholder. Your messaging and marketing has to now lead though with the only question, and it's what's in it for them. I'm not even kidding you. If I got off this today, the first thing I'm doing with my team is I'm sitting there, I'm literally taking a white piece of paper. I am writing down every single thing I'm doing for my marketing. I don't care if it's the smallest thing that's costing you $6.99 a month. Write it all down, audit that, look at it, and then literally put in another box. Is this answering the question of what's in it for them, my customer, my policyholder? If the answer is no, get rid of it. Bring in stuff that is going to make the experience better, that you're going to maybe even be able to touch them a few more times per year in the sense of communicating with them, building the relationship, the rapport. And people ask me, I said, Ryan, do you think that, we're going to go back to how we were before COVID? And, I think my answer, I'm malleable. I love change. For me, I'm not really concerned about so much the past anymore. I'm kind of looking forward, but I think there'll be glimpses of it. I do think forever though, we've kind of changed and grown. When we look at the commercial real estate industry, my goodness, company owners are starting to understand, holy smokes, my team can be efficient with, Zoom or FaceTime or, Asana and all these different programs that are out there to essentially, create a team atmosphere and be productive, using an online ecosystem. So I think that you're going to have glimpses of both. I think we're going to be kind of a hybrid if I was to think, how we're going to do it. So the things that I'm talking about today is building that brand currency. This is forever. This is going to be a forever game now. This is, your policyholder is going to come back after this too with a different expectation. Like, hey, I was doing everything online. Jeff Bezos has been shipping everything to my door. Like, so why does it take so long to get a policy done? Why is it taking so long to get this change made? Especially when the customers or your policyholder is saying, hey, like, I've been with you guys for like 10 years. Why is this taking so long? I just need to do it. Is there like a streamlined process? And in most industries, the industry doesn't innovate itself. It's your customer that innovates you. I mean, when we study the greats and we study the different industries, a lot of the time it's the customer kind of saying, hey, could you do this? Could you do this better? And then that prompts you, because you want to stay in business, to meet the customer where they'd like to meet you. And, I think this gives us a time to get on kind of the upswing of that and really move and pull forward in that sense. The importance of content to shape it, to solve a problem, is something that it sounds quite simple, but when your customer is saying, hey, I'm online, don't know what's going on here, I'm there, you want to think about what their experience is. And if it's a new customer, again, you're really trying to get into the mind of where do they spend their time? Where are they investing their energy? What does their life situation look like? And, for instance, right now, COVID happened. So, home renovation companies, some of them, they've done quite well because people are saying, oh, looks like I got to modify my house right now because I need an office. I need it to be quiet. I need an area that's separate. Kids are learning from home. It's a completely different dynamic. So people on here who, hey, you're living, you have a family, if you have kids, you understand how quick your days are going. And you're trying to maybe hop on a call, and then your son or daughter is intercepting you and saying, hey, mom, dad, like I need this, I need that. And, just think about that and then try to position yourself in that situation, and say, okay, now if I'm offering a service or product or some insurance to somebody, this is what they're going through right now. And how can I make that better for them? For instance, my broker, and I'm just using his example, he called me and left me a voicemail. For me, I'm like, when somebody leaves a voicemail, either like it's an emergency or I'm like I don't, sometimes I'm guilty. I don't check a lot of my voicemails, on the personal side of things. I asked him, I said, hey, could you send me a text? And it was like, he kept trying to pull me back into the way he wanted to talk to me, and I kept trying to pull him back into the way I wanted to talk to him. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't have time to get on the phone with you right now and go through this boring stuff that you're making more boring. It's just all wrong for me right now, right? It's all wrong for me. So again, your customer is saying, hello, this is what I like. Here's my expectation. All you got to do is listen, and then you got to try to figure out how you can meet them there. So I think some takeaways that I'll kind of dwindle into some questions is really get excited about the platforms that you have and the reach that you have. I mean, the days of kind of sitting in the four walls of your office are kind of coming to an end in that sense. And you have this thing called the phone, which makes you able to talk to everybody. And right now, I feel like you have access to a lot of people you never have access to, for the simple fact of, how their life has changed. And, now they got a little bit more time, and now they are on their phones in droves, because this is how they're communicating. This is how they're running their business. And when you think of brand, just think, does it make you feel good? Are we making people feel good by our brand, right? People want to feel good, a brand. And I'll say this one thing, because I love studying money. I like to understand why, some people have more money than others, where money comes from, why money is so enticing. But I heard this talk a while back, and the person explained money so good. He said, Ryan, he says, money wants to be seduced. Money wants to be seduced. Money wants to feel good. It wants to feel cozy. It wants to know that it's going to a safe home, a great home. It wants to know that the process is going to be good. It wants to know that everything is straightforward. And I would have to say that about brand. The brand should be clear. It should be simple. It should be concise. And you should always think about it like a form of money. It's currency, because the brand is the only thing. It's like a great investment. It's paying you in perpetuity. It's consistently giving you that, it's like writing a policy. I loved insurance for that residual factor. Like, oh, those monthly commissions. Woo, this is great. As long as I got that retention happening and I got a little more business coming in, I'm like, oh, I like this setup. Well, your brand is the same thing. You might drop a post on Instagram right now that just says, well, we did this Amplify virtual conference, which I hope everybody has, you should, if right now you should take a picture of your computer, tag at Ryan Holtz 1 on Instagram and tag in anybody who you know on here and tag it out, because that should be done. But you're going to think to yourself, oh my goodness, I sat here, I did this conference today, and you're going to throw that first post out or your 10th post or a post. And you'd be surprised that sometimes it's the gift that keeps on giving. It might take 6 months, but somebody's like, I seen you guys on Instagram. I remember that thing that you posted like 4 months ago. And it's amazing how you start building that momentum. Meanwhile, you're getting new business on the daily and other businesses propping up. And that's why brand for me is everything. It's the one thing that it is the gift that keeps on giving if you do it properly in that sense. Is there any questions? I'd like to see if there is any questions at this point. Is there a moderator in the room that can tell me if there's questions? I don't see anything.
Yeah, Ryan, there's a few questions coming through. Just a second here to put them in the chat.
I would love that. Let's do some questions, because I think that'd be good.
Sure. So I encourage everyone to throw your questions in the chat and we'll ask them. First of all, Ryan, just thanks. I have a couple questions just from some of the people here at Trufla.
Sure, man.
I think everyone on the call is in some way in business development, whether they know it or not. And you kind of mentioned lunches, the best way to get to know people. In 2021, what is the new lunch? How are you going to deal with that going into the new year?
You know what? The new lunch, that's a great question. For me, it's been, I have this thing called, I do 8-minute calls. So there's one day a week I will do 8-minute calls. So I'll literally message somebody, even if it's on Instagram or however they came. I always try to send a video, and I said, listen, I just want to chat with you for 8 minutes this week. I'll send you the Zoom link. And I've literally done I think I'm going for the record. I've done like 80 calls in a day doing these 8-minute calls. Here's what's amazing about that, Tom, though. Great question. Content you get from the calls. So sometimes I hop on the call and I'm like, hey, I can video myself talking on the call because they're asking me questions that my prospects or my future business people are asking me. So then I can clip it. And that 8 minutes sometimes now turns into a nice 60-minute piece of content that I get to put on all my social media, which is great repurpose, right? So does that answer?
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing for everyone here is using your Zoom and your Calendly links to set up those calls, or just pick it up and make the phone call, right?
And Tom, to add to that, don't put the weight on the person you're trying to set up the call with. Meaning, if you say, "Hey Ryan," like I get these ridiculous messages all the time on LinkedIn. "Hey Ryan, I'd like to schedule a 30-minute call or a 60-minute call." Oh my gosh, like an hour? I'm a dad. I'm a business owner. I'm a husband. There's only 24 hours. I can't do an hour, but I can do 8 minutes.
Yep. And I think, everyone on the call will agree is everyone's just kind of back-to-back Zoom meetings all day. So there is no time for the getting work done, right? That isn't a phone call.
What? 100%, my friend.
Some questions coming in from the chat. We were wondering is how can you best use LinkedIn to build your brand?
Oh my gosh. Who asked that question? You got to send me a message after so I can send you some love for that. LinkedIn, I call it Linkstagram. So I use a method. It's called combining LinkedIn with Instagram. And Instagram is, it's like, it used to be for the cool people. And, you get a lot of cheesiness, I just think don't post a picture in front of your fancy car on Instagram. Don't do that on social media in general. But LinkedIn, you get a lot more formatted. I find the quality of the comments are educated. So my quick tips on LinkedIn is LinkedIn cost per dollar. Right now you don't have to spend no money. LinkedIn is awesome. The biggest thing I can say about LinkedIn that's changed though is how people are starting to show their personalities now. So whether you're good at writing, whether you can take a picture, whether you're great at video, LinkedIn allows you to do all of that. But the first thing I will say about going on LinkedIn is do not go on LinkedIn and start doing the digital version of walking into a cocktail room and just start throwing your business card at people. at their faces before you even talk to them. LinkedIn, again, treat it like you would go to a networking event and try to build that rapport. But the biggest thing is put content on there, but show your personality.
And then that actually kind of leads to my next question about personality and kind of starting a brand. So I know a lot of the brokers on this call probably never really use social media. Some may not even have a website. So kind of what's the starting point for some of those people, especially in the commercial insurance world, to really build that trust in a commercial brand with their customers?
So meaning you're a commercial broker trying to write new commercial business?
Yeah, we always have a lot of focus on like the personal lines and car insurance, auto insurance, the stuff we see, we all have and hold. But commercial's a little different, right?
It is. I remember my old boss used to say, hey, I respect people that are writing personal lines insurance, but it's a different ball game once you cross over into the commercial. Commercial play is, again, LinkedIn, because you're getting people on LinkedIn that do not use Instagram, but they're on LinkedIn. So, and we're talking the decision makers, the founders of the company or their board of directors, but you can get to those people. I think if you have a couple dollars, especially if you are a broker and you say, you know what, maybe we would do a little advertising or even some in-mail type messages on LinkedIn and throw a couple dollars at it. I think you could go quick, fast. However, if you don't want to spend any money on it and you say, hey, I just want to invest time in there, it's kind of going back to what I said before about showing your personality, showing up and pushing out content. For example, let's say I was a commercial broker and I really want to write, I was going to say restaurants. I should never say that right now.
Maybe not this week.
Yeah. But let's say I wanted to write restaurants, and let's assuming that COVID didn't, wipe them out in a terrible way. My heart goes out to them. But let's say I wanted to write about them and I wanted to get more business through restaurants. What I would do is I would go on a LinkedIn search. I would figure out anybody who's like a restaurateur, and I would couple that with going on Instagram, looking at my local area, if that's where I was targeting business, going into for instance, Edmonton, hashtag YEG food, going to all the restaurants and immediately start commenting on their posts, start sending them messages just saying, hey, thanks so much. But what I would do is I would say the number one piece of insurance that restaurant owners don't know about that might save their bacon in a bad situation. And then I would take that piece of content. It'd be a picture of me and the emoji getting excited, and there's got the meme and it says the number one insurance piece that restaurant owners don't have. Now you're going to target the restaurant owner. The restaurant owner is going to see that piece of content, and now you're on your way to having a little bit of a relationship started there. And you can virtually do that all for zero money, just effort.
So once you build content, people will see it, share it, and if it resonates, they'll like it, right?
If it's good, if the content is serving that question, what's in it for them? Like if I put out a piece of,
oh yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say you kind of already were answering one of my questions. Was the next one is what is the one thing you don't want to see people do online or kind of with their social media presence or brand?
It's just that slippery slope between coming in and joining the party and not trying to provide that upfront value and just going so salesy. However, at the same token, when you come to the party online, or if you open up a social account and you say, I want to start building my brand on there, don't be shy. Come in and make it very clear in your profile. This is what I do. I serve people. I help people. And be very clear about it. And then as soon as you're clear about it, again, start pushing out content that just genuinely educates people. The biggest thing right now in terms of content is people are taking the strategy of, constant education. And right now, everybody's trying to put out, hey, here's all this education. Well, if your counterpart or your competitor's doing that, you need to find something to step out of the noise. And that's where I implore people who are listening to this right now, if you have a hobby that's not insurance, I hope you do, just for ease of brain. Talk about that. If you're fishing or you're a golfer, mix in your golfing content with your insurance content.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to see the other side of their world, right? And actually, everyone working from home, I think we've seen a little bit more people's personality than ever before, right? So another quick question from Stuart is, what are some ways that a broker can connect connect in a relationship or personal way in an insurance transaction. So, in insurance, it's very transactional. What are some ways to kind of personalize the relationship a little bit with your customer?
Well, I'll answer that. So on the automotive side, it's legislated too. So, our communications with people, depending on who owns the dealership, for example, and I'm going to kind of segue that into who owns the brokerage, you need to make sure that you have kind of some sort of written process or very clear on how you kind of want your team to communicate with your client base. And the reason I say that is we've seen a few instances where, somebody's communicating with somebody. Let's say I'm communicating with Tom and I'm like, hey, Tom, it's Ryan here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting to that. Well, I need to understand when I should probably cut the conversation off with Tom, because Tom might say, yo, Ryan, I appreciate you, man. You're my broker, but don't be weird. And so we've seen some people kind of go past that threshold of, well, are you being professional, courteous, and trying to build a rapport, or are you being a little too personal? I don't know if brokers right now have any kind of text program set up or have thought of that. But right now, text message, anybody who's watching this, that's a great way to communicate and to consistently start, reaching out. My biggest thing, though, is that the data that you have on your policyholders, when everybody's birthday is. So every single year, like you could do this right now. You could say, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to figure out when everybody's birthday is, and I'm going to start giving out $15 Starbucks cards and saying, happy birthday from your insurance brokers. Coffee's on us today. Like something simple. And, then you can scale it however you want.
No, for sure. There's some great ideas to make it a little bit more of a personal experience. Another question from Eric is, a big part of our brand is our image. It involves giving back to the communities we are a part of. We get the big picture at we get pictures at certain events or checks presentations, big posts on social media. Sometimes even local TV stations and channels show up. Is there something more we can be doing to build our brand in this kind of view of giving back to the community?
Tom, can you read that again? Sorry, just read that again. I just want to hear that again.
Sorry, we're copying and pasting them into the chat, so I do apologize here.
No, that's okay.
Actually, this comes from Eric, and Eric, I hope you don't mind. This is Eric from McDougall Insurance, and a big part of the McDougall brand is giving back to the communities.
What's up, Eric?
If I know Eric, he's waving back. Trust me. So a big part of their brand is giving back to the communities that they serve and communities that they operate in. Right now, they're kind of limited to maybe a post on social media, maybe a small news story in the newspaper. Is there anything they can be doing more to build that brand and kind of bring more awareness and attention to those things?
Okay, so just so I understand the question, so basically they're getting featured in local paper, they're doing local charity work, so sometimes they're being tagged on posts, and maybe they'll reshare that on their own social channels. How could they better utilize that or kind of repurpose it?
Both. I think the question is kind of a two-part. Is how can they get more attention and more eyes on it, and two, how can they lean into that as a brand strategy and as a kind of a brand identity?
Well, it's interesting because, for the longest time, I would hear companies that would say, hey, if we're doing charity work, we don't want to come across as though we're trying to monopolize or play an angle off doing charity work, because this is something we're doing from the kindness of our hearts. Fast forward to 2021 now. No, when I was working for a company, I remember when we were doing charity work, things that I would do to monopolize on it is, if I knew we were doing a cross-promoted event, I'd literally pick up the phone. I would talk to, if it's the owner or the marketing person over there, and I would say, how can we co-brand this so that we can run this? There was a simple thing we did, and it's funny. It's and if anybody's listening that thinks they cannot make insurance sound sexy through brand, I'm gonna challenge you on that card. We did this little campaign, and this will answer his question. It was called #DropYourGaunch. Everybody's like, what the heck did he just say? But it was a homeless shelter in Edmonton that said, hey, we don't have an influx. We need male underwear. This is a homeless shelter. Makes perfect sense. So as a dealership, we're sitting back and we're saying, okay, you need male underwear. Marketing person's like, how the heck can I spin this to even remotely get this to be appealing? I know people want to help. Fast forward, we created a hashtag called Drop Your Gaunch. People were showing up through social media. We had a vehicle set up, and people were literally just going to the store, buying underwear, throwing it in the back of the truck. And we encourage people, take a picture, tag yourself while you're throwing the underwear in the truck. It became so big and it became trending that major media got onto it because they're like, what's this local dealership doing Drop Your Gaunch campaign, raising all these underwear for homeless males for the local shelter? By doing that campaign, we repurposed the content. We also co-branded with the great work that we were doing. We had tons of content to repost on our feeds, and we got the looks of major media. So you have to take that piece of content that you're getting tagged in and you need to do the work, meaning take the weight and say, okay, they're tagging us. How can we make this a little better?
Yeah, if you're doing the work and there's a link out there, make sure it's going back to your site and that you're getting some more credit for it, right?
100%.
Ryan, there's a whole bunch of questions in the chat of people wondering where they can find you and where they can get kind of more of your posts and maybe get a quick summary of the topics we talked about today. So.
Yes. RyanHoltz.ca. You can download my podcast, the Ryan Holtz Show podcast. It's available on any, Spotify, Apple, and anybody who wants to book a call. I do these little brand jams after I give a talk, free of charge, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. If you want to say, hey, here's my brand, let's pick it apart really quick, give me some ideas. You can just text 780-218-5899 or email info@ryanholtz.ca. Very, very easy to find.
Yeah. And everyone, you can find them on LinkedIn, and especially I believe we've got a few posts together, and it actually, one person is asking if you could give a quick summary of your 7 or 8 points you went over in a LinkedIn post so they can like it and start sharing it with people in their brokerage. So
100%. Yeah, no problems. This will be pushed out. I got one camera there, one camera there, one camera here. So you will see a post about this. And again, I encourage people, hop on Instagram or whatever channel @RyanHoltz1 and just say hi, ask questions, have fun. Social's fun. At the end of all this, insurance is insurance, and it's very needed in life. But we want to make sure that we're having fun doing it.
No, that was great. Can't thank you enough, Ryan. Really appreciated all your insight today. Everyone stick around. We're a few-minute break, and then we're going to be coming back with Sharif and the great team at Lowest Rates for our final session of the day.